Hello friends, my name is Vineet Srivastav and for the last 18 months I have been running YByte where I teach computer programming to young children. Now when it comes to this topic of coding for kids, there's obviously a lot of enthusiasm out there. We see tons and tons of courses being offered. But I also sense that there's a degree of confusion because there's a lot of terminology, lots of platforms, and it can get quite overwhelming for anybody to figure out where this is all possibly headed. So I thought I'll try take an attempt to sort of simplify all this for you, maybe tell you in simple words what all these different options are, how do they connect to each other, and how you as a parent or as a student can possibly benefit from this new and exciting paradigm. In short, I'm going to try and decode the coding maze for you. So first of all, let's start with this term, what is coding? Well, in simple words, coding is the act of giving instructions to a computer, which itself is basically like a tiny number crunching machine, to make it do what we want it to do. So basically telling computer what to do, whatever we want it to do. And computer is a versatile computer number crunching machine. It will do it for us. Now it turns out there are many ways we can give instructions to a computer. That could be through some text-based coding or through some block coding, but this all falls in the same gamut of coding. Now, one question I'm often asked is coding same as programming? Well, strictly speaking, there may be some differences. There are some subtle differences, but as far as I am concerned, I am going to use these two words interchangeably, which means when I say coding and programming, they mean one and the same thing. And that is the act of giving a computer, which itself is a tiny number crunching machine, instructions so that it does whatever we want it to do. Now, before we move on, let's look at a little bit more about computers, right? So computers are in fact all around us, right? So now when you look at this picture, I'm sure all of us will associate a laptop with a computer, but what we possibly sometimes miss is that in fact these number crunching machines are in practically everything that we are using, which whether they are wristwatches, televisions, washing machines, and so on and so forth. So they are all around us. And number two, they are being programmed to perform a huge variety of tasks. So whether you are, driving your car, whether you are watching a video, whether you are playing a game, surfing the web, some computer somewhere has been programmed to do whatever you want it to do. So now you might wonder that if computers are all over the place and anyway we are interacting with them, then what exactly do you mean by giving instructions to a computer, right? So this is where I bring in the so-called user's view versus the developer's view. So as a user, we all interact with computers, we give instructions to them. For example, when we set alarm or when we, let's say, flip channel through Netflix, program, or let's say when we surf the web. But what we are talking of here is creating the developer. So when we are teaching coding to kids or to anybody else, what we really mean is that we are going to put them in the developer's shoes and we are going to make them build programs and applications that then other people can use. So that's the whole philosophy over here. Now, one thing about computers, and this is quite interesting, right? That if at all they are extremely obedient and hardworking, right? Now, this is something I tell my students to always keep in mind that computers, no matter how fabulous they might look, do not think on their own. So, in fact, they do exactly what their programmers has told them to do. Good, bad, ugly. They'll do exactly what the programmer has told them to do, and hence they are basically obedient and hardworking friends because they do it really well and they do it really fast, but they do not think. So that brings me to a question as to why does computer programming help children, right? Why people ask me this question? That's a good question, in fact, right? So first of all, like I told you, computers are everywhere, right? So once we teach students to program, then they get this creator's mindset, which in general helps them because they look at the world in a different way. Secondly, like I told you, computers are nothing but extremely obedient, hardworking friends. They do not think on their own, which means that when we get them to solve problems, no matter what the problem is, we have to do the thinking on their behalf. What that means is that we have to decompose large problems into smaller problems. We have to prioritize these smaller problems. We have to recognize patterns, which means you have to see, okay, this problem looks similar to that problem and hence can be solved together. And then we have to make the computer do them one by one. Now, this is what is called computational thinking. And if you really think about it, a lot of tasks that we do, whether they are, no matter what field, what pursuit we are in, fit into this basic bracket, right? So in short, computational thinking is this logical step-by-step process of solving problems which applies to a very wide variety of pursuits, and which is why computer programming becomes extremely helpful for young children. Now, all of this was very beautifully illustrated in a recent masterclass that we conducted at Vybyte. Please take a look at the description. I've put this link in the description there. Now, as I mentioned before, also there are two main modes to program. These are block coding and text-based coding. So I'm going to spend some time looking at both of these before we move forward. First of all, let's look at what is block coding, right? The idea is very beautiful, very simple. Coding by dragging and dropping pre-prepared code blocks. So basically somebody has created these platforms which has these nicely done code blocks. You as a programmer drag and drop them like Lego blocks, and you make your give instructions to the computer, right? Now, one thing I want to point out here is that just because the code blocks have been pre-prepared, it does not mean that the programmer doesn't have to think. In fact, the thinking element is exactly the same whether you're doing block coding or text-based coding. Now, in block coding, there are two very important platforms. First one is Scratch. Now, Scratch, the idea is that we have this cat sprite, this is called sprite. So we take these code blocks, drop them here, and we can make our cat do, for example, games, animations, quizzes, and so on and so forth. In fact, at Vybyte, we have a 30-week program delving deep into Scratch, and you can take a look at our website to see what all kind of things can be done in Scratch. There's also an equally powerful and let's say a very interesting platform called code.all, which also a lot of students learn, which is quite similar also. So the whole idea is again, dragging code blocks to make the something happen on the stage. As I was doing research for this video, I came across this very beautiful resource called Blockly Games. In fact, I urge all youngsters to look at it because this is really beautiful. It's block-based, puzzle-based learning. So it's computational thinking inculcated through puzzles. So please take a look at this. This will be very interesting. Next, there is this text-based coding, right? So the idea is again similar, that instead of these pre-prepared blocks of code, we are now giving instructions to the computer by typing text, right? Now this text is not just random text. This text is all part of what is called a programming language, right? So basically some kind of rules, some kind of syntax that you must be aware of when you are writing code in this way, right? So there are like lots and lots of programming languages out there. I'm going to cover 3 of them which I see students at this age being offered, right? So first one, of course, the very popular these days is the language called Python. Extremely versatile, very interesting, very nice syntax, and tons of applications, right? So obviously a lot of students are learning Python these days, which is great. I've also seen students being offered Java, right? Now Java, in my understanding, is a little bit more involved. Its primary usage is for making large enterprise applications. So very large applications typically get built in Java. And then, of course, there is this, good old C language, which is a powerful language in its own right. Extremely detailed interaction with the computer memory, hence useful in, for example, embedded systems and so on. But then, for the exact same reasons, I feel it can get a little bit overwhelming for young kids, right? So if you were to ask me a pick, I would, at this, situation, I would most likely and quite strongly, in fact, go with Python. That if you want to learn a text-based language, Python is a very good choice. It's versatile, it's easy to pick up, and there's lots of resources out there that you can learn from. All right, so now that we have seen block coding and text-based coding, let us see some application areas where all these can be applied, right? In fact, I've sort of classified these areas into 6 areas, which I see, which I'll talk about now. So first of all, mobile app development, web development, game development, 3D animations, robotics microcontrollers, and then finally AI and ML. So let's look at each one of these, one by one to see what what these mean, what are the different tools in there, and what are the different platforms that are relevant to these areas. First of all, coming to mobile app development. Well, the idea is very simple. It's developing applications that run on a smartphone, right? Now, this is something we all have got so used to because we have apps for practically everything these days. But if you really think about it, every app has 2 parts. One is how the front end looks, which means what kind of buttons, what kind of menus it has, and second is the data crunching that it does. So what happens behind the scene. One of the very popular tools these days that kids are being introduced to is this tool called Thunkable, which is a block-based tool which allows students to do apps on both ways. So which means that they can define, for example, how the app looks, what is the look and feel of the app, and then, also what the app does, right? So notice that this part is exactly same like your code.org or Blockly, and which is why I said this is basically a block-based approach to develop mobile apps, right? So pretty interesting. Next, let's look at game development, right? Now, games are obviously an exciting way for students to learn. In fact, uh, all the projects that we make our students do in Scratch are based on some game or the other, right? But game development itself is a great industry, vast industry, and what I find fascinating about it is that it's not just logic, but it's also this creative element which comes together in a game development, right? So now, like I said, students start, building games in, let's say, Scratch and so on, but there are other tools also which you can develop, we can explore further. And one tool that comes to my mind is this tool called GDevelop, which is again an open source of a free tool. And it says easy to use game creator with no programming language to learn. So basically, this is really like an extension to block coding. They have all these objects with properties, and you have some kind of like, sort of block coding type of methodology to build games which have a little bit more professional looking outcome. However, make no mistakes, game development itself is a huge field. Lots of research goes on into this. There are other platforms also, for example, Roblox these days, very popular with kids. And I've seen programs being offered where kids can develop Roblox games. But remember that this is a little bit more involved. This involves learning the Roblox specific scripts and languages, and hence it becomes a lot more involved, I would say, compared to say something like GDevelop or before that. Yeah. Next, we spoke about web development, right? Well, again, websites and web applications, which all part of come to web development, internet applications, is something that we have become so used to. There are really three parts to this, which are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, without getting too caught up in the technicalities, let me just try to give you a high-level picture. HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, controls what is the contents of a web page. CSS, the cascaded style sheets, means how does this web page appear, and JavaScript, which is basically creating the language, which is the language which creates interaction. So if you want to click a button or something like that, that's typically JavaScript, right? So I'm going to just give you a very simple example, like literally a toy example, just to give you an idea of what all these things mean, right? So let's say I have a web page. Now this web page, I'm sure it looks like a really trivial to you because we are used to many more fascinating web pages, but that's how we start, yeah. So if let's say I have this web page which says this is so amazing, I like it, right? Now here I'm doing it only with HTML. You notice HTML and this thing here, and I've written this text here. That's why it appears like this on the web page. So only HTML. Yes, it controls what goes inside the web page, but then with style sheets, I can go and say, okay, look, this heading should be probably blue in color and this should be red in color, and I can make it go across an entire website, right? So basically, like, the entire web page appears in a consistent new look, which is good, right? Now, adding JavaScript to the mix, right? So I can make this website in a way that the user can now interact with it. So for example, I can have a button here, it says click me, and I've written some code. Yes, I've given a button as well as some code as to what happens when this user is clicking me. Now this is JavaScript code, and this runs inside the browser, right? So for example, when the user maybe clicks this, perhaps this text becomes larger, right? Now this is obviously a very simple illustration, but I hope you get the idea, right? Now, a little bit more about JavaScript. JavaScript is in fact an extremely popular language. Uh, in fact, 95% of all websites use JavaScript in some form or the other, right? In fact, I spoke about code.org and Scratch. They are also built on JavaScript. There are tons and tons of frameworks out there which people have built which extend the functionality. Uh, Two specific frameworks that I would want to talk about are this Matter.js and P5.js, which are, which can allow you to build interaction and games within the browser, right? So a lot of students, want to learn JavaScript, and I think it's a great choice because, it runs in the browser, and it can do a lot of things, right? But bear in mind that JavaScript is part of this web development, process, so it comes hand in hand with HTML and CSS. All right, now moving forward, so far whatever we have spoken of is what is called two-dimensional games, which means we are exploring only the X and Y coordinates. But then there are also tools which allow us to explore the third dimension. And one tool that I know is being learned by students is this tool called Blender. Now, Blender is completely open source and free to use for any purpose, and it allows you to build stuff in the so-called third dimension, right? So we have this X, Y, and Z axis. Now the fascinating as the outcome might be, but bear in mind that exploring the third dimension requires a certain degree of mathematical maturity, which the student must develop before he can really start engaging with this, right? But if you look at the outcome that Blender produces, it's like phenomenal. It will blow your mind because it's like really professional level, right? So I see students doing this, and I think it's a great creative outlet for their, energies, let's say. Next, we have this entire field of robotics and microcontrollers where we have code for devices that interact with the real physical world, right? So now we are not restricted by just the computer screen, but in fact, the code is going to interact with the real world out there, right? So the important bit here is that though we are developing the code on a laptop, for instance, we are finding some way to transfer this to an external hardware, right? So this could be, say, a USB cable, or sometimes maybe a Wi-Fi, or some way basically to send this code over to this, say, this external hardware where the code then runs, right? So now a very interesting piece of hardware here is this thing called microbit. I've seen programs being offered where people are being taught to code this microbit, and then it does some things. You can use Scratch, you can use Python, you can also use this tool from Microsoft which allows you to code microbit, Scratch itself as an extension, and this is how the microbit looks, right? Similarly, there's also a board called Arduino. Very, very popular, extremely versatile. People do lots and lots of things with it. You can program Arduino using its own IDE, so this kind of text-based, but there's also extensions I've seen where people use Scratch, for instance, to program an Arduino, right? Now, you can clearly imagine that this is where robotics comes in, and something that excites a lot of students because, it's obviously an exciting field. It should excite, right? And lots of potential. You can imagine that this hardware could reside inside a robot or inside a toy and so on. The point that I want to make is that while it's exciting, but this, since we are dealing with an external hardware, so it's no longer just about your code, but it's also about understanding what that hardware is doing, right? Also, we are including things like motors and sensors, right? So if you really want to make, a deep impact in this, you have to understand what these different things are, right? Which is why, in my understanding, I think, robotics should be picked up a little bit later compared to, say, regular coding. So, student gets familiar with the coding part of it, and then you can definitely go and explore, what are all these different options available to you. And like I said, this is an exciting field. Let's move forward. I come to this topic of AI and ML, which are basically programs that learn from the data that they process. Right now, this is something which is very hot today. I'm sure all of us who have been following the news, the tech news particularly, have heard these terms. But these are kind of basically special kind of programs which kind of learn from the data that they process. So, for example, we might want to write a program which recognizes all the cars in a picture, right? So how it works at sort of a high level is that we train the program first. So we show it a lot of cars and we say, okay, look, all of these are cars. And over time, we see that the program itself learns. So when we, for example, deploy it in the field and we show it a car, it says, oh yeah, that's a car, right? Now, this is again a very high level view, just to give you an idea of what these programs are. But I do want to make one point that just because the computer is starting to infer or to learn, it doesn't mean that the basic thesis that it is obedient has broken. In fact, the reason it's able to do this is because somebody somewhere has programmed this to do this, right? Programmed this so smartly, right? Now, one question that comes up, okay, and I think it's a very fair question, that at a school going age, is it even realistic to talk about machine learning and AI to, say, a school going kid, right? And I think it's a fair question because this is quite an involved topic, right? However, I do see a lot of people linking coding with AI, so I thought it's worth for me to put my mind out here, right? My take is that the underlying mathematics is way too involved for a school going student, right? So I think that's a given, right? Most of the school students will not understand why this thing works. However, they can still build applications and enjoy the magic, which is fine. And I hope one day, sometime in future, they'll go and learn about why this thing works, right? So, that's the spirit I would take AI and ML in at this age. There's also a bunch of resources, which you can look at. I'm putting some of these links here. Understand the magic, see what all it can do, and it can be quite rewarding, right? One tool that really caught my eye was this tool called Machine Learning for Kids, right? Now, this is very interesting because this introduces machine learning within the Scratch framework, right? So please take a look at this website. You can make, for example, teach a computer to play a game using machine learning within Scratch. So I thought that was very, very impressive. All right, so once again, let's take this bird's eye view. We started with block coding, text coding, and then we looked at these application areas: app development, web development, game development, 3D animations, robotics and microcontrollers, AI and ML, right? So I hope this classification is somewhat helpful. But you might still wonder, where do I go from here? I mean, what should I do given all this enormity? So I'm going to leave you with some pieces of advice, which I hope. So I'm going to leave you with 3 pieces of advice, which I hope are useful. First and foremost, we do not need to learn every language or every platform out there, because firstly, it's humanly impossible, and two, these things are highly dynamic. Instead, what we should do is to focus on fundamentals, learn by doing. Now, this is important because programming is something you learn only by doing yourself. Learn to learn. This is a dynamic field. You must learn how to update yourself. But if your fundamentals are strong, you will find that the process of updation is that much more easier. And finally, enjoy this process, right? The process, we get enabled with the outcome, but remember, behind the outcome, there's always a process, and the process sometimes is actually painful because it requires debugging, it requires making codes work, understanding things more deeply, but that is where the real learning is, which is why I say enjoy the process. Next, spend more time with block coding. Now, I know a lot of people tell you that, block coding is only for novices, not much use, but I tend to completely differ here when we are talking of young learners who have had little exposure to programming. I think block coding platforms are phenomenal to learn principles of computational thinking. They are engaging and they really invoke interest, which is why at Ybyte we have an extensive program built on Scratch, covering a lots and lots of principles, which of course students can build upon later on as they go on. Uh, and finally, basic science and mathematics are still very, very important. In fact, everything that we discussed here is all rooted in science and mathematics. So my advice is treat coding as an enrichment, as a very, very important enrichment, because you will find that if you do coding well, if you follow the nice process, if you learn by doing, you will see that your science and mathematics will also improve. Conversely, as the science and mathematics improve, you will see that you will do more and more things with coding. And in fact, your computer will appear like an extension of your mind, which will make you do things which you can't even imagine today. So with that, I leave you with an advice that I tell all my students: forever enjoy coding. This is a creative enterprise. If you want to know how we at Ybyte make it happen for our students, I'll be more than happy to talk to you. Hope you found this useful. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.